Hello, everyone. This is Patrice Davis, and I am so excited to be here with y'all. It took me a while to get this live thing going. I was first on a different, basically, I'm glad to be here with you all. I am set up, ready to talk about how to grow your consulting business from zero clients to overbooked. So again, I'm Patrice Davis. Welcome to Ready, Set, Go Consult Live. You all have seen some of my videos now. We're going to be able to really have a conversation in real time. So looking forward to any questions you may have. But if not, I've got some information ready to share with you, some really detailed information. I was ended, but like I said, we're going to really talk about how to grow your consulting business from zero clients to overbooked. So let me first start off by letting you know who I am, just in case you're not familiar with any of the other information I've shared online. I'm the owner of GrantsWorks. GrantsWorks is a grant consulting company, grant compliance consulting company. So I'm working with organizations that get 6, 7, and even 8-figure grants, and we're helping them manage those. Now, I want to let you know that between January and May, I have been sharing some information about my skills, my expertise. I was stalking different Facebook groups that I thought would be interested in the services and the content to share. And I saw that some of the content that I shared was kind of, people were really intrigued because they never heard anyone talk about what I was talking about in that way. So I'm hoping you take that as the first thing, right? So, around May, some of you would probably been aware of some of this content I was sharing in the various industry-specific Facebook groups. And that's another tip. This person reached out and said, "Hey, I have this, very large grant from this particular government agency. I use the grant to run my nonprofit data center in a state that I won't mention. I apologize for how cavernous it sounds in here." And then, of course, she was extremely underpriced, and that's when you come forward, when you come extremely underpriced. And that's one of the things about when you come from corporate, when you come from having a job to actually shifting into running your own, make about $50, $60 an hour. This is going to take me about 5-10 hours. I should only charge her service anyway. Here's what I do: the problem, but the problem is helping ease their concerns. The service delivery was on point. So I just wanted to delivery is problematic because it doesn't really involve, taking the client from A to B. You didn't really help the client understand what you did, number one. Number two, how what you did, you can continue to do to make that client feel more story. You grow your consulting business from zero to overbooked. So what you want to do is make sure that, of course, have that's something unless you have the skill, experience, expertise, and knowledge. And so that goes without saying. And it's in a niche that is easy to and that you're looking for, right? And then the point is probably not the best way to describe, somewhere that and making sure that you're communicating. Just explained what it was like when I had my first client. I did the thing, I jumped into emails, I took this on, I took charge, and everything was good. But the problem was I didn't really help that client, again, the problem, and then help her understand what you should be doing going forward, whether I'm there or not. And then, of course, your reputation. I always tell people, hey, your reputation, I tell people on our team that the work that we do isn't just about doing the work. It's about making sure that we're building and protecting our reputation. That is so important. And as a result, if you're always thinking about your reputation, you're always going to make sure that you deliver, not just deliver, that you over deliver. So I just want to make sure we're always thinking about protecting our reputation, and everything that we talk about here is kind of tied to all of that. We're also going to talk about positioning. How do you position your company, your consulting biz, your freelance business so that it stands out from others? If you're an HR consultant, or a DEI consultant, or an IT consultant, or a business process consultant, or an operations consultant, what makes your consulting business different from others? So we're going to talk about positioning. We're also going to talk about thought leadership. And this is something you hear all the time, but it's true. You really do need to separate yourself from the pack, right? By making sure that your thought leadership, you have a specific perspective that you can use to amplify your promotions and amplify. I'm not saying it's the only thing, it's you're using it to amplify and augment the way you promote your business. And thought leadership is extremely important. In each of these, I'm going to try to explain how we've done it. So just want to give you guys a tip on that. And then the last thing, number 10, is your services. You notice services wasn't at the top, right? That's not, you don't pull people in with your services. You pull people in by making sure that you're communicating to them that you have what they need. And in order for you to be able to properly communicate that, you need to be very, very clear about the expertise, your seek that you bring to the table. You've got to be very, very clear about the niche and your market, and of course your positioning, right? So I just want to make sure that we're thinking about that. Don't ever, 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 ever think that I'm going to sell my services and I'll be good. I'm going to let them know I can design a great website and I'll be good. Or I'm going to provide this so-and-so service the best and I'm going to be good. It's your services is what kind of seals the deal, but it's not what brings them in. All right. So we're now going to talk about your seek and you, right? So your seek, remember, is your skills, expertise, experience, and your knowledge. So your seek is, you really have to be able to have the cred, right? Not the street cred. You got to have that credibility and the credentials. Now, credentials doesn't mean that you got to have, two PhDs and two master's degrees and all of these things. Credentials is really, do you have the credentials for your particular industry? So do you have, the certain certifications? Do you have a certain amount of professional development? Do you have, yes, maybe definitely some formal education in whatever it is that you are offering, but then what other credentials do you bring to the table? Maybe you have the degrees and you have 10 years of experience, but then also you've been training on this topic for like 15 years. That's credentials and that's credibility, right? So I just talked about is the first part of that, but sometimes you have skills like that, but sometimes you have skills like consulting skills that really help you amp up the service. Even though we are a grant management consulting firm, we are also very good at managing projects. And as a result, that's a skill that helps us deliver our services in a better way. So I just want to make sure you're thinking through some of those non-consulting skills, those other, let's call it supporting skills. They're like a supporting act. They're supporting everything else that you're doing for your clients. And then we don't really want to think about what makes you different and how you communicate that difference. So you and your skills are equal. What your company, what are the different for example, using, there are a lot of people that do what grant writers were. And many of you know what a grant writer is. But not a lot of people knew what a grant manager is, right? So a grant manager, that's that person who has the expertise to manage the grants. They're the person that's reading the regulations. They're the one that's managing the budgets. They're monitoring the costs. They're working with the federal officials if it's a federal grant, working with the state or local government officials if it's a state or local government grant. That's managing the grant. You're managing the grant once it's been awarded. So you got to have budgeting experience, some basic financial management experience. You've got to be, able to read regulations and all the things that comes with that. So I'm giving you that as an example to help you understand that everybody knew this grant world, but they didn't know about this other part of it, which was all grant management. So what did I do? I spent time educating folks. Like I would write a blog or two. I would put things out into the ether to make sure that I was communicating what we do. I even wrote an article that I thought is actually one of the blogs that gets the most traffic on my site right now. And that's the difference between a grant writer and a grant manager. So there's an education element to the work that I did when I first launched the business. And even now I'm still doing that because a lot of organizations, they get these big multi-million-dollar grants and they don't realize that there are people whose expertise it is to actually manage it for them. And so they kind of pitter patter through it. They mess things up sometimes. And it isn't until they actually you know, actually have, a not so great audit, that they realize, oh, we've got to get a professional. We got to get someone that really knows how to do this, whose job it is to watch over this. So I just want to make sure we talk a little bit about that. Now we're going to talk about your niche. So your niche is extremely important. We hear the word all the time, but it really is important. So I just gave you an example. We know the big world of grants, but then there's a niche of grant management. For example, maybe you're a DEI consultant, but maybe you focus on DEI initiatives for universities. And that's a great place to be because, universities tend to have, some of them tend to have, bigger budgets, multiple departments. Maybe you'll start out in the, College of Engineering. You've done a fantastic job there, doing whatever DEI training you did in that college. Before you know it, you're referred for the College of Architecture, right? So just thinking bigger about that one university client. And even though you'll be more than likely be on different departments because they typically have their own department budgets, or college, their budgets for that particular institution within the overall college. Maybe you are an HR consultant that specializes in global employees, or maybe you are a web designer who only services skilled, blue collar workers, such as skilled electricians and plumbers. A lot of these people have really fantastic skills, but they may not be online, right? So if maybe you're a web designer and hey, plumbers, electricians, and other folks, they need websites too. They don't want to have to be on a job site, picking up the phone and action. Oh, it's bad. Claudian, thanks for letting me know. I'm gonna try that. Let me try that again. I'm gonna try it again. Let me see if I can switch. Oh, I'm gonna see if that's a little bit better now. I'm hoping that's better now. I'm gonna keep going, y'all. I'm gonna keep going. And I'm gonna go back to talking about that niche. So just want to make sure that we're thinking about it. Is your niche something that's in demand? So just want to make sure, you're thinking very, very specifically about your niche. If you have what you believe are broad, or experience in maybe a broad industry, then how can you niche it down to something that is both in demand and something that you know enough of, or you're skilled enough at, so that you can actually deliver the service in a really streamlined way? Because here's what I learned. Sometimes you can know a thing, but because you don't know enough, you may not know the most effective or the most efficient way of delivering that service. So sometimes just knowing enough or knowing the basics isn't enough. You really, really have to know more. I'm really hoping that this live may be kind of slow, and the connection may be bad, but I'm hoping that y'all are going to be able to get the whole thing once it's recorded and you get to watch it after the fact. But I'm going to keep it going. So another thing I want to point out is DEI. We talked about that, and I also want to let you know a little bit more about, think about educating your target market. Remember, I used the example of, I was, basically stalking the different websites, the different Facebook groups, trying to figure out, okay, who is interested in this service? Who would be the market? It's funny because now I think back and I was on the right path, but I've since, let's say, refined my target market. So I'm going to give you an example. In the grant space, a lot of times people think that it's only nonprofits that are looking for grants, but there are actually a lot of businesses, large manufacturing firms, large utility companies, that are also looking for grants. They also apply for grants, mostly on the government contract side, but in the last year or so, many of them have definitely been going after grants. So if I had only focused on nonprofits, I really would have narrowed my market. And also universities. Universities probably the most grant funding in this country. But as a result of better understanding my target market, I've expanded it. I'm still focused on government grants, but now I'm no longer just focused on nonprofits. My niche still allows me to serve universities. My niche also still allows me to serve local government agencies because they also get grants, and of course allows me to serve universities. My niche also still allows me to serve local government agencies because they also get grants, and of course companies. Things are important because you think about it from the perspective of your client, your prospective client, then you are automatically going to be not necessarily designing services to fit them, but certainly communicating in a way that attracts them, right? Really makes them uneasy. So, for example, I gave the example of need websites just like everyone else. Sometimes, that plumber's on a job site and he or she's having to answer calls. Hey, are you a master plumber who wants to master his? But then you can say, okay, thank you, Claudia, I appreciate it. But then you can say, well, let me build a website. You get to focus on your current client, the current clunky, the way that I described that. But that's of really speaking to that plumber who needs to fix something. I'm just giving you guys an example. So another thing to think about, I always use these really large government grants for clients. Some of the clients, they come to us because they don't have anyone in their community acute, and they're looking for someone who can provide that service. So what do I do? In post, we're actually sharing that, hey, if you've had a bad, if you are unsure how to manage your grant, or you have a site visit coming up, or something along those lines, we kind of just really kind of poke at what that pain point is. So just want to make sure you're probably not the best examples, but I'm giving you some, just want to make sure you're thinking through their pain point. And you've got employees all over the world, which we know is possible now. You can have a startup and got employees in Indonesia, some in Thailand, some in Ghana, some in Brazil, some right here in the States, others maybe, in some European country. Now, what are we looking at? We talk about 5, 6 different countries. You know what's going to be different across 5, 6 different countries? Labor laws. Now, what if you're an HR consultant that specializes in labor laws of different countries? Do you know that is you can't just go out and say I'm an HR consultant. You should not have a website that says I'm an HR consultant. You know labor laws have got you up at night, right? And that's immediately going to get someone's attention, because now they're going to hopefully constantly acquire. You're always going to be there to service them. Maybe next time they're going to go into a whole different country, and you can find out what they need and make sure that they're operating well in that country. So I'm just giving you an example of HR consultant, global labor laws, right? Web designer that focuses on plumbers and electricians. So just giving you, just trying to really hone in, dependable. We know that, right? You have to make sure that not only are you dependable, but what you deliver looks good. It's well formatted. It's error-free. If it means you got to hire a high school student or college student to review your consulting report before it's sent to your client, then that's what you got to do, right? Because no matter how well you speak, how well you deliver that service, if that report is messy and is full of errors, that reflects on you and on your business. Okay. So and this is also where your other skills, like your other as a result, you can manage that project so that everything you deliver in this timeline. We do that for our clients. I recommend you do the same thing. We do some other things too that we, to make sure that the client doesn't really have to think much, right? We coming in prepared. Every time we meet with our clients, we're prepared. It's every single time, 95, 97% of the times when we meet with our clients, we're coming in prepared. That means you can write really good reports. That means your emails are always on point. That means you're communicating very clearly in your emails or in whatever other thing you're communicating in writing. And maybe you're a consultant who's a badass at creating budgets. What does that mean? That means that you are creating a really good budget for your own company to make sure that you're factoring in your costs and your potential profit. And sometimes, of course, having that budget and finance experience helps you with some of the other things you're doing for your client that may not necessarily be based on your core expertise, but it can be helpful. So maybe, again, you are an HR consultant with global labor law expertise, but guess what? Not only do you know labor laws, but you can help them figure out how much. Give you an example of how all these other skills can enhance. I've already heard a couple of minutes ago, reputation is extremely important. So one of the first things that I explain to new team members is we're a small firm, so we maintain our reputation. We'll get the whole experience, not just that report they paid us for, but a report they paid us for, and we showed up. And then we also were able to even research and find answers during the meeting, right? So we were always on point. And then your positioning. One of the courses, one of the things that we teach is more about positioning. Positioning is that mental real estate, your consulting business. Using the example of brand management consulting business, one of the first things that we note is that we're not regular brand people. We are in that space. Your thought. I'm just going to sit here for a little bit because thought is important. So thought leadership is really important, y'all. And it's not just about thought leadership. Thought leadership is just the thoughts that you have. What's important is how do you communicate those thoughts? What are those thoughts? How does that thought leadership make you stand out? Let's finish talking about positioning. So I'm going to give you an example using, again, my company. Our company, I already talked about how we stand out in terms of positioning. One of the things that when I say stand out, these are all the things we're constantly doing. I'm not saying that we're at the top of the hill yet. I'm saying this is what we do to get to the top of the hill. Thought leadership, an example is, not only are we federal grant specialists, we are federal grant specialists who believe, a lot of details about that. We just have a very specific thought about making sure that the training that is offered to manage these multi-million-dollar grants that the federal government is awarding to organizations should be recipient-centered, right? And then we talk about that a lot. We believe that if you're going to get a $10 million grant, you need to get training. If you want to get a $35 million grant and it's your very first federal grant, and by the way, you got to have 9 partners in your grant, and a government is awarding you that funding, there should be required training. So not only do we make sure we develop thought leadership on that, it's also tied to the fact that we offer training. So it's serving 2 purposes. Number one, to make sure we stand out as federal grant specialists, but we're also federal grant specialists that believe that training should be a part and parcel of your 10, 15, $20 million grant. And oh, by the way, we have training we can offer. So I just want to throw that out there. And then the last thing I have on here is services. And by the way, I'm going to go into how you can get overbooked. And if you have any questions, Claudia, thank you so much. I appreciate it. If you have any questions, drop in the chat. I know I'm giving up a lot. I'm doing a lot of talking, but just know that I will answer any questions that you want to ask. So we're going to talk about the last thing, number 10, right? The name of this live is 10 tips on how to grow your consulting business from 0 clients to being overbooked. So we're going to talk about how to get overbooked. So the 10th thing, though, is your services. You notice the services is last, not because it's the last. The services is extremely important because if you don't do well and you don't deliver well, then you would have done all of that and you don't have nothing to back it up. The service is extremely important. It's just that that's your last interaction before you actually that's your last, let's say, touch point. So say, for example, right, we talked about all these things, and that's basically a perception, right? That you need they need to know your niche. You need to know what their pain points are. You need to be able to deliver the services. You need to protect your reputation. You've got to make sure that you're positioning your company well. You've got to have thought leadership. That's all before they actually sign that consulting agreement and pay you that money. Now you got to make sure you deliver those services. And that's why I wanted to make sure that we talked about that as well. So it's last because, again, it's that process that many of us, many sometimes are the least interested in. They don't care about the fancy name you give your service. They don't care about the 15 steps it takes for you to actually, deliver the service. All they want to know is, here's my point A and how you going to get me to point B. Right? Obviously, in your proposal, you want to be able to provide some details. Obviously, in your sales calls, you want to be able to provide some details, not too much, right? Because the idea is not, I always tell people, talk about your services, talk about the things that you offer in both general and specific terms. General so they understand it, specific so they know that you know your stuff, but not so specific that they can take your information and run off and do it themselves. So just want to make sure we talk about that. So just want to make sure that, services are very, very important. So now that you understand your niche, your target market, their pain points, what you bring to the table, your skills, experience, expertise, and your knowledge, all of that helps you build services that speak exactly to that client, right? So that's what I mean by it's not the last thing, but it's just that thing that will everything will kind of roll up to make sure that the services are specific to that particular to the clients that you're looking for. Now we're going to talk about getting overbooked. So the first thing to getting overbooked is consistency, right? And this took me some time to learn as well. Like I was consistently sharing information. I was doing so good at that when my first year of my business that exactly 1 year later, and this is the honest truth. I started my business January 17th is when I went to the office, took care of it, and basically started the DBA under my existing business. And the very next year, in January of 2021, um, a large foundation reached out to me, dropped an RFP in my inbox. I responded to that response as a request for proposal, submitted a proposal. It was a very good proposal, and I got the contract, my very first six-figure contract. I talk about it all the time because that was just 1 year into business. Um, and I talk about it all the time because it's the example of what I did to actually get noticed. So what was I doing? I told y'all I was stalking Facebook groups, right? I was writing blogs. I was sharing my expertise. I was making it known that, hey, there's this new consultant in town. She's talking about grants in a whole different way. She's giving you some examples of how you're supposed to manage the grant. She's, basically displaying her expertise so that people know, okay, that's the person who's going to help me with my federal grant. And again, I did not know this organization, but I tell you, I opened up that request for proposal, saw it, and I was like, that's the one for me. That proposal and the contract that I got after that was me developing a multi-module federal grant management training series. Here's the kicker. Before I got that proposal, I was doing what? Live webinars teaching people about federal grants. So all that content I was sharing, quite frankly, I was able to use some of that content in that training I created for the client. So I'm just using that as an example of how your thought leadership and all the other things that you do to attract clients based on, very good knowledge of your seek, your expertise, your niche, your positioning, and your thought leadership can attract a client to you. And since then, that's a core part of our offering. That's a core part of the things that we offer. So either I provide customized training, I literally fly to a city and provide training, or a company pays us to develop training specifically for them. So that's the first thing, being consistent. And then the next thing is, like I said, offering those free tips on your sales calls. Just be very careful about what the tip is that you're offering. And the reason for some of those free tips is to add value, gain trust, and also help them understand that you have the credibility. Remember, we talked about that that you have the credibility and the credentials to solve their problems. So those free tips are really important. And then also free training is the same thing with the free training. To this day, I still do free webinars, not as often, but I still do free webinars. I try to do at least one per quarter, because every time you do that free training, you're attracting new people into your universe, right? Do those free live trainings on LinkedIn. Do those free webinars, and then, make sure you, number one, have an extremely good, title, promote it, and give it at least a 2-week lead time in terms of promotion. All of those things helps to attract, and even if, let's say your turnout for that webinar was, it's kind of low, about 30, 40 people. By the time you take that webinar and spread it in different places, you're attracting more eyeballs. So I just want to make sure you're thinking about that. And lead generation. Lead generation is something that I learned a little bit too late, but this is something that I do all the time. So you just have to figure out, and you guys can, I can talk about lead generation all day. Figure out what is it that will help you generate leads based on your market, and make sure that you are consistent with it. Give it some, give it 2-3 months, so you can measure how well it's actually generating leads. See what you can do to, enhance that lead gen method. or add other things, of course, to the mix of things that you do to generate leads. We have a number of things that we do. A lot of it has to do with content marketing, but we do also have some very specific strategies that we put in place. And then, of course, having a system. Once you have those leads, what system do you have to accommodate those leads? You can't be responding to them all day long, because then you're not going to have time to actually deliver the services, right? So what system do you have in place so that as those leads are increasing, you have a way to kind of have them enter your universe, get some initial communication from you. Then, of course, it will lead to, a sales call. And then after the sales call, what things do you have in place to make sure that you can continue to nurture them, just in case they're still on the fence trying to figure out whether or not they should hire your firm. So that's the system. That's that system building that's really, really important. So I don't know if you have, and some of you guys, if you're watching this after the live, feel free to drop your questions, in your comments, and I will definitely make sure that I, follow up, answer any questions you may have. This is something I really enjoy doing, which is talking about consulting. If I did not start this consulting business, I wouldn't have been able to do some of the things that I've been able to do over the last 2 or 3 years. Traveling on my time, traveling and of course serving clients while I'm in the middle of, Europe, or in the middle of the Caribbean, or in the middle of Central America. So all of those things I've been able to do as a result of starting my own business. So I highly recommend that you do the same. The final thing I want to let you all know is I have the Ready, Set, Go Consult membership. It's open right now. You can get it. You can go to readysetgoconsult.com and get a free ebook. And the ebook tells you all about, it's actually called How to Launch and Grow a multi-six-figure consulting business. So you can grab that ebook. It's free. So definitely check that out. Also, you can check out some of the other stuff on the website. We've got a video. I've got podcast episodes. I've got articles. I've got a blog with like 30 articles. And a lot of the things that I'm sharing today are in some of those blogs. And we have much more information, like what should be in your proposals, about the vision for your business, and how that can help you really think long term, about some of my work from anywhere adventures. So definitely check out the Ready, Set, Go Consult blog. I even have lessons learned, or what did I do when a client, and I say a client because they actually became a client, when a prospect tried to get me to lower my prices, or lower my fees, and how I handled that. So lots of information on the readysetgoconsult.com website. But yeah, definitely go there to get that free ebook. And I'm going to end our live, and I'm hoping everything that I've shared you find helpful. Let me know that. Or any other comments that you may have about anything I've shared, please drop it in the chat. Maybe you drop it in the, I said the chat. I'm so used to hosting meetings on Zoom. Drop it in the comments. And, I'll try to respond as soon as I can. So I hope this information was helpful for y'all. Have a great evening. It's evening here. I'm in Atlanta, as you can see. It's nighttime. And just let me know what you're thinking, and I will make sure, actually drop in the chat also in the comments, any other topics you want me to make sure I cover. I have a list of things I plan on covering with every single live. I'll be doing a live every week. But if there's something else you want me to talk about, drop it in the comments, and I'll definitely look into it, see if this is something I can do for y'all and make it happen. All right? Bye.